Hello, my name is Kiriath, and today we are going to have a look at some models that Games Workshop should absolutely not get rid of from the store anytime soon, preferably ever. Well, maybe not ever, that might be going a bit far, but these are things that I think should stick around for some considerable time. Some of the, maybe not all-time classics for some, but some of my favourite, especially slightly older sculpts that, to be honest, have aged really, really well and still hold certain qualities that perhaps some more recent releases are kind of lacking. And we're going to start with this guy. So this is the Space Marine Captain, Lord Executioner. And if you are one of those people that feels as though the Primaris stuff is a little bit too clean, a little bit too modern, a bit too sleek, this, I propose, is a perfect remedy for that, because this has all of the stuff that I think drew a lot of people to Space Marines in the first place. There's some heavy ornamentation going on this model, but it's not massively excessive. It doesn't get in the way. There's little things here and there, like the half skulls with the wings coming off the jump pack, the skull on top along with the iron halo, the purity seals all over the shoulders, and the massive axe at the same time. The service studs and the cybernetic parts that are embedded into the Space Marine's head. This is, I think, one of the nicest Space Marine sculpts. It's a shame that it's, resin and a bit older, but I feel like it's holding up exceptionally well, and it has like a Stern Guard, like a Stern Guard veteran kind of quality to it in terms of the ornamentation and just how storied this captain has to be to look the way that he does. I think it is like almost an antidote to what we see from the Primaris stuff. Even the captains, they look a lot more kind of ornamental and a lot more I don't know, complex than the standard Marines, but there's just something about the layout of this particular model and the little trinkets here and there that for some reason, I don't know, it has a purposefulness. It's not even an inaction pose. It's not like a particularly dynamic pose, so to speak, except you can see that he's clearly calmly walking forwards holding that massive axe. There is a kind of inevitable look to this thing that he will catch you and you will get beheaded immediately. Just something about it that is just aged really, really well. Speaking of which, the Black Templars chaplain Grimaldus and his retinue, obviously. I honestly don't feel like this model's really aged, to be honest. This is another one that I think you could look at this in another 5 or 6 years' time and it would still look good. There is a lot of detail on that, as you'd expect from a Black Templars character, but it still looks pretty fresh. Maybe the scaling could be a bit better, but it's not just Grimaldus, it's also the retinue as well. There are some nice models in the retinue. The standard bearer / incense burner is a really nice touch. I really like the way that model's been done. There's so much to this group of models. It properly tells a story, and it just doesn't really seem to have aged particularly. Because this again, as you can see, it's a finely detailed resin cast. It's getting on a bit, but I don't think it really shows for it. It does help that Grimaldus is also an amazing character, but there are details on this model, and there are little touches here and there that I think would remain relevant for a long, long time. And the detail is so well done that it still looks pretty damn good. What an amazing use of the word damn there to move on to Damned Legionaries. So yeah, Legion of the Damned squad. To be honest, all of the Legion of the Damned stuff. I actually don't think this is aging as well as some of the other stuff that I've picked out for this. There is one thing here that absolutely is aged not great and will continue to not age great, but I still want it to be available anyway. But they're doing all right. They're doing okay. They're not looking ideal anymore. There are some bits here and there that could do with a bit of an update, that could do with being messed around with. Whether we'll ever see an update for the Legion of the Damned, I don't know. To be honest, it seems increasingly unlikely to me as something that could happen. I would love to be wrong, though. I would absolutely love to be wrong. But these guys, they've been a staple of like Space Marine lore for so long, and whilst they're not aging great in some ways, some of the proportions are a little bit strange here and there, and they are starting to show their age a little. It's one of those things whereby I don't think it actually matters, in a way. I think the Legion of the Damned have got so much of their own personality and their own feel to them that these models do an almost perfect job of representing them, I think. It would just be a shame to see them go. And there are little touches here and there that I really like. There's some stuff that, Chaos has started to somewhat take from this. Like, it feels like the what's his name? The Executioner seems to have taken some serious nods from some of this stuff. Same with the Chaplain for the Space Marines, the Primaris Chaplain. Anyway, the Legion of the Damned just deserve to stick around, and whilst they might not be aging great, they still look decent. They are still completely serviceable. There's still some really nice models in the range. I just really like these guys. It would be one of those great shames if they ever disappeared. The next up is the Valkyrie. Classic vehicle. Absolutely classic vehicle, the Valkyrie. For whatever reason, this thing has always been one of my favourite vehicles that Games Workshop's made. And again, as a kit, this is getting on a bit now. But it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all, because it still looks just as good as it did when it was first released. It doesn't really, to me, feel like it's aged at all. It's one of those designs that, to be honest, they could keep selling this thing indefinitely, and I feel like it would fit no matter where you put it, alongside any number of other like Imperial forces. It just has such a long-lasting design to it. I don't think it's ever going to look not good. They just did such a good job when they first made this. It just always looks good. It just doesn't seem to get old. Again, speaking of which, the Death Company Dreadnought, I think hands down is one of my favourite Dreadnoughts that Games Workshop's ever made. And again, it's one of those things whereby the only reason I would ever want to see this replaced would be if there was a Redemptor version, and even then, I would much prefer it if they kept it as close to this as possible. There is something just extra beefy, extra threatening about the Death Company Dreadnought. There is something about it that it just has that extra bulk due to I think it's the Magna Grapples on the top, isn't it, that probably give it a lot more of that kind of imposing weight. The double close combat weapons still look good. It's just it's like a properly good looking Dreadnought, that. And having said that, I'd only want to see it replaced with a Redemptor. I don't know if I'd want to see it replaced with a Redemptor. A Redemptor version would be nice, but I don't think I'd ever want to see this actually fully go. It has just an air to it that none of the other Dreadnoughts have. It just speaks of death so well, and obviously it's a Death Company Dreadnought, so it should, but I don't think it's as simple as like just sticking a couple of skulls on it or anything like that. I think there's a very like well done balance of kind of open space and decoration on this. It could be way too busy if you wanted to go full on with skulls and bones, but it's not too busy. It's actually quite restrained for what it is, and that just adds to how good it looks. I think this is something that is just... I just don't think that's ever going to look old, so to speak. It just ages really, really well. Speaking of which, classic Land Raider. Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong with a Land Raider. If this kit ever disappeared off the site, I'd be gutted. And I mean, I chose specifically the Chaos version because this is the first version of a Land Raider I ever owned. The Chaos version. It went through a couple of incarnations. Started out with Iron Warriors. Speaking of which, my paint job did not look anywhere near as good as that. I can tell you that, because I was like 40, 50. It was a long time ago, and I couldn't paint for anything. I can't really paint for anything now, but I especially couldn't paint for anything back then. It did not look anything like that. It looked considerably worse in every way. But the Land Raider, again, is just one of those classic vehicles that I think could just go on forever and ever. And it does look older. I'm not going to lie, it does look old. It does look a little bit dated in some ways, but for some reason it just works to its advantage. The same with the Lehman Russ, actually. I mean, I don't have the Lehman Russ on here, which was a bit of an error in a way. But the Valkyrie, the Lehman Russ, the Land Raider, these are three vehicles especially that are just so ingrained and so timeless that they might look dated, the Land Raider and the Lehman Russ specifically, but they look dated in a way that fits everything else. They look dated not in a negative fashion, but in a way that you'd expect from technology that old. It doesn't look bad, it just looks old. Which I think is actually quite an achievement to make. I just love the Land Raider. I'd be genuinely gutted if this ever disappeared. I would hope this is one of those things that just sticks around pretty much forever, to be honest with you. Now, one that I think probably there's going to be some people who disagree with this. The Iron Warriors Warsmith is not... It's not aged great. Okay? It looks okay. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't look terrible. It could look a little bit better. It could look a bit more up to date. It could definitely look a bit more up to date in certain areas, but I've got such a soft spot for this model, even though I hated putting it together, which is true of all the metal models of old. But it still has enough life left in it that I think it could last a while. I mean, even if for nothing else than to cannibalise some parts, like the arm, the mechanical arm, even the one with the combi melter, to be fair, would work. It has something so Iron Warriors about it, and it does look a bit dated, it does look a bit old, but I like it so much that, again, I would just be sad if it disappeared. I'm assuming it doesn't sell great. I'm assuming it hardly sells at all, to be fair. But look at it. It's like a piece of history. Slightly different. I've picked this, right, the Skull Cannon, because I think it's one of the, weirdly, one of the most timeless designs that Games Workshop has made, just because of how completely mental and incomprehensible this thing is. So, I think this works, and could work pretty much forever, purely because of how mad it is. It's sort of... It's kind of like a bike, sort of. It's got the single wheel in the back. Do you mind? What did you do that for? There we go. It's got the single wheel in the back, and that's fine. It's also got that kind of bizarre sort of maybe kind of a wheel in the front, but more like a roller. An actual face with teeth and a tongue. There's flesh going across it, like flesh all down there with skulls embedded, but it's also a platform at the same time. There seem to be exhausts there, and there's a full-on cannon as well. It's such a weird model. It's a genuinely weird model, and I like it because of how odd it is. It's not just like a chariot being pulled. It's not like a floating disc being pulled by other floating discs. It's partially mechanical, but almost all organic at the same time. I think it's one of the proper timeless models, just because it's so odd. It's never gonna not fit somewhere, you know. It's just too weird to not last the distance somehow. Which similarly, the Medusa from the Dark Eldar, again, I have no idea whether these are good. If you're a Dark Eldar player, by all means let me know if you think this is a decent unit to take. I have no idea. I just know that it's one of the more interesting and weird models that Games Workshop has made. It's one of the more, properly alien models that Games Workshop has made. The head is really odd. The fact that it condenses down to that single eye with a strange bit of armour. The armour is it is recognisably Dark Eldar in construction, but then you've got that robe on the underneath. Is that part of the Medusa itself? Is it would it dress that way if it weren't for the armor and the shackles? Like, it's a little bit incomprehensible, but there's a lot of nice detail in there that's aged really well. Like, it doesn't look rubbish. It doesn't look as though it's aged badly, even though, again, we're looking at something that is very, very resin and not at all plastic. But there's just a quality to this thing that just seems to last endlessly. It's weird as anything, but it looks really good, and it seems to just continually look really good no matter how old it gets. Sort of like Illic Nightspear as well, actually. I reckon this is one of the nicest Eldar models that have been done for just in general. It's a nice pose, it's well proportioned, it has weirdly kind of a look of not motion but purpose to it. It's, again, a model that hasn't really aged. Even the face, like, the faces for me are the things that really show a model's age. And because this one is like half covered, it's taken a lot of the aging process out. Like, the faces on models have just got better and better over time. The quality, the accuracy, all of that has just increased as time's gone on. This is from a time where the faces probably weren't actually that great. I'm just trying to think of how old this thing is now. But in a way it doesn't matter because you can't see half of it. The bit that you can see looks really good, and the bits that I think probably have had the most trouble historically, like around the mouth and nose area, have been a little rough in the past. You can't see them, so it looks newer than it is. It looks more recent than it is. It doesn't look like an older model. It looks pretty fresh for its age. Admittedly, the cutout job they've done on this picture is not great. I don't know what it looks like it's been cut out of something else. Maybe it was on a different background. Someone's been using the wrong Photoshop tool around the hair there. You can see it's cut into the hair itself. Slightly shoddy cutout aside. Again, another model that has lasted well and actually could conceivably continue to last for the foreseeable future and still look good doing it as opposed to look old doing it. So those are some models that I reckon could last a pretty damn long time, even more than they already have. That's some of my personal favourites that I reckon it'd be nice if they stuck around for the long haul, even though some of them have already been sticking around for the long haul for quite a few years. I reckon they can last the distance, and it would be a shame to see them go. Not just in any time soon, but like even in the next few years, it'd be a shame to see some of these go. Do you have any models that you believe Games Workshop should just leave available indefinitely? If so, what are they? Of the ones shown today, are there any that you particularly agree or disagree with? That would be the interesting thing. I'm assuming most of you will say you're mad for wanting the Warsmith to stick around forever because look at it. And maybe, but nostalgia is a powerful thing. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below. In the meantime, feel free to click all the things, Patreon, video, subscribe, all that stuff. Click it if you like, don't click if you don't want to. And there's an affiliate link in the description for Element Games. If you click that, I get a little something for sending you that way. You save between 50 and 25% off 40k stuff or any other tabletop game in this stock and paint and all that stuff. It's a nice way to support the channel without doing anything extra. So you can do that if you wish. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Toodaloo.